Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. We'll get started in just a moment. Give folks a chance to stream in here. I hope you're all having some fruitful conversations. You're enjoying the other programming. It's a big day. All right, we'll get started in just a moment. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon. All right, let's get started. So thank you all for tuning in today. My name is Georgia Gleason. I'm Partnerships Associate at Tech Talent Project. And thanks for tuning in. Please, sorry we're getting started a couple minutes late. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name, where you're from, and maybe some agencies you've spoken with today that you're excited about. So we know that many of you here are considering a change for the first time. And a transition like this brings lots of questions, lots of unknowns. Our panelists today, our fantastic panelists today, have recently made the leap into government. And we're going to get to know their stories and hear some of their advice during this exciting time for all of you and for them. So I'm thrilled to introduce our speakers. Kat Greim is a product manager at the Small Business Administration, where they support small businesses who contract with the federal government. Kat is based in Chicago and has 10 plus years of experience building technology in education, nonprofit, and government contexts. Johncarlo Cerna is a software engineer at the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Agency, where he builds software to support refugee and asylum operations. Johncarlo is based in South Florida and is an avid civic tech enthusiast with 4 years in the government technology space. Tonya Webster is the first Chief Customer Experience Officer for the state of New York. In her role, she is responsible for improving access to services and benefits for New Yorkers. Tonya is based in Albany, New York, and has more than 20 years experience in operations and customer experience management for complex organizations. Thank you all for joining us. We're going to kick off the conversation with a few pre-crafted questions, and then we'll open it up to all of you. So please, as you have them, post your questions in the chat throughout the conversation, and we will get to them in just a little while. All right, let's jump in. So I'll ask each of you to tell us about yourself, what you were doing before government, and what are you doing now. Let's start with Tonya.
Well, first, thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to have the opportunity just to share my story with you on my transition from the private sector into government. Again, my name is Tonya Webster, and as Georgia mentioned, I've been named the first, appointed by the governor of New York, the first Chief Customer Experience Officer for the state. In my career, I've had the opportunity to work with so many amazing companies and organizations doing operations, customer service type work, opening access in different industries. So I've worked the financial service industry where you're opening up access to credit products and mortgages and loans and things like that. I've worked in media and telecommunications where you're opening up people having access to broadband and things like that. And most recently, I was the Chief Customer Experience Officer for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Massachusetts, where in that role, our work was to really ensure that we were opening up equitable healthcare to our members. So lots of work and a passion for providing these types of services. But again, as you heard, I've always done this in the private sector for companies. So I was really excited for the opportunity to think about things a little bit differently and think about how to bring these skills over into the public sector. I've always worked in those roles with government teams and things like that. So it's nice to have a different point of view and to be on this side and to kind of bring all of those skills in my career skill sets over into this role. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Tonya. Awesome. Thanks for being here. Let's jump to Kat.
Wonderful. Thanks, Georgia. Thank you, Tonya. I'm so happy to be here, y'all. I'm Kat Greim again. I work for the Small Business Administration, which is an agency in the federal government. I'm based in Chicago. I do remote work with a team who's mostly based in DC. And I joined the SBA, which I will use that one because Small Business Administration is kind of a lot of words to say. I joined the SBA in 2022, so I'm just over a year in this new role. And before my role in federal, I had a meandering road toward technology. I started in education, then I was kind of in the ed tech nonprofit space, eventually led me to a company doing federal contracting work, building websites like healthcare.gov. So one note, if you're not familiar, I think it's worth noting that a lot of the technology and websites that the federal government operates, and I think at other levels as well, right, are largely built by engineers and designers and product managers on contractor teams. So that's where I kind of started to get exposure to building things for government agencies and getting to use, product management skills, human-centered design processes, and bringing those skills and techniques to problems that I was really excited to work on at a really big scale. We build things that serve millions of people and services that really need to function to help people do important things in their lives. So at Ad Hoc, that's the contracting company I was at previously, I started there as a product manager, more like working on a sprint team with designers and engineers, and our client was the federal government, like agencies building products like healthcare.gov, APIs for Medicare data, the website veterans use to find and claim their benefits. So, a whole variety of consulting type projects. And, that work, I was very embedded in teams. And during my time there, the company grew. I grew in my role with it, and over time shifted more into the program management space. So that was more like people management, client management, budget contracts, admin, all those things. The last thing I did in that role was, build a big 30-person team and run a project from discovery all the way through launch. But at that point, I was, a little more removed from the day-to-day building, more like managing the teams who built things. So I say all that to try to describe the difference, right, between what I was doing in that private sector context and what my role looks like now. So now I am a senior advisor for product strategy at SBA. On paper, I'm also called an IT program manager. And I think, my role, you can even see in these titles that my role kind of spans both of the disciplines that I've come from. So doing a mix of this product strategy work, where I often fill a role that would maybe be called more like a product owner on a team, right? Like setting the vision and direction and like making decisions and kind of directing other folks who do a lot of the work. But I lean in where I see gaps, and I get to do things like lead user research, build product strategy. There's space for kind of both of those things in my role. So yeah, I'll stop on that for now and pass it on. We can get more into it later.
Thanks, Kat. And I'm sure that the massive scale of impact through working in government compared to private will come up again in our conversation. So, Johncarlo, please go ahead, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, again, thanks for having me. My name is Johncarlo. Everyone, you can also call me JC. I am based in sunny South Florida, down here. And before government, I was actually in school. I was in college, studying computer science at the University of Florida. Go Gators! And when I was studying computer science, I did internships as a software engineer. At Motorola Solutions, then at NASA, afterwards at Microsoft, and then I interned with Coding It Forward with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services uh, agency as a software engineer. Um, and in those roles, I worked as a software engineer, so my role didn't essentially change much between like private sector and public sector. But I guess some of the responsibilities and things that I was building was. And I know we'll talk more about kind of why the transition came along and what draws people to public tech. But I'll keep it very short for here. Just I really like the work that happens in government. I think the scale is really amazing, and the things that we can build and the like policies that we can create, are going to affect people, hopefully in very positive ways, in ways that sometimes the private sector really just can't hit. So that's me for now.
Super. Thank you, JC. So let's move on to the next question. So let's hear about let's dive into your why. What was your motivation behind transitioning? What about your current role and the work really spoke to you when you were considering it? And how did you come about actually taking the leap? Maybe what was going through your head, any fears or hesitations you had? Um, so let's hear about your real motivation and your why. And JC, let's keep it going. What do you say?
Cool, we're back. Awesome. Um, yeah. So, like I said, before taking like the leap into public technology, into civic tech, I worked in like in the private sector, and I thought it was interesting. I liked learning about different software engineering technologies, and things like that. Um, but I kind of felt like there was something missing. It didn't feel like the work was incredibly fulfilling. Don't get me wrong; it was very interesting, and I liked doing it. But it just kind of felt like something wasn't there. And so when I was in college, I was just kind of like on Facebook, like looking for like public technology, or just other things that I could learn, and I came across Coding It Forward. And they were talking about matching students to public agencies, to federal agencies, and having people get some experience working with them. I thought that was cool. Um, so I interviewed, I applied, I got in, and I guess the rest is history because I really enjoyed it. I think it's interesting to build like Uber for dogs if you're working for like the private sector, and that may be fulfilling for a lot of folks. But uh, the work that I was doing, building a software to make it easier for refugee and asylum applicants to come into the country and start new lives. I thought, line for line for code, that was more like worth it in my opinion. Like my time felt better spent doing those kinds of things than again building Uber for dogs. Um, so I kind of fell in love with it. After I graduated, I finished my internships. I graduated and COVID hit almost immediately, and we kind of realized that Congress didn't really have the tools that it needed to function, in a virtual world. So I joined with Tech Congress, which is a nonprofit organization. Um, they work with Congress to match people with UBARC. That's funny. Um, yeah, they work with technologists to give Congress the technological resources they need to like talk about policy, but also create like internal continuity and modernization solutions. Um, and so when I worked with them, we had a host of like low hanging fruit, like this is what we can do to build things that'll make staffers lives better and will also help them talk to their constituents better and communicate with them, and get things done. And that work really kind of showed me that like there's a lot of things that we can do. Like everyone in this on this panel and everyone in this room right now, there's a lot of things we can do to make government technology better. There's a lot of things that we can do to make it easier for people to get in this space. Um, and we can have like a really amazing government that does the things that it's supposed to do very efficiently and very fast. But it requires all of us. And in that, I thought this is a really great space for me to be, and I want to stay in here. And so I came back to Citizenship and Immigration Services, the place that I interned at, and now we're building more. We're building more technology and more software to again make it easier for people to immigrate to this country and start new lives.
Thank you. I think it's such a fantastic success story and a testament to the Coding It Forward program that you actually went back to the agency where you interned. And huge shout out to Coding It Forward. Definitely, they have a booth, so check them out and go say hi. So, Tonya, please let's hear from you. What's your why? What's your motivation?
Yes, and I think we might actually have a booth here today too, I think, for New York State. So my why. Well, one thing I'll step back and say when I talk about my role as a customer experience officer, and why I'm here and why this is important is that customer experience work is rooted in technology. So underneath all of this, I'm a technologist. And the job of customer experience is how are we partnering with Kat and JC and all the technology people here to build user experiences that are intuitive for people so that they can have ease in what they do, ease and access in what they do, and it's understandable. So I'll say that in my work. So when I think about my why on why it was time to make this transition, I've been in senior leadership roles at a lot of these big companies for a long time, and we all know it points back to the revenue. So how I get paid and the targets and everything is growing that bottom line or increasing that stock price, which after a set period of time, you kind of get good at doing that and used to doing that, but it's not fulfilling, right? I started thinking about my purpose. It's like, okay, we're rallying, on the stock market. Whoa, okay, but what do we actually do? So I started asking myself that more and more. And I think you just get to a point in your career to say you have enough different accomplishments, and you start shifting into purpose-driven aspects of your life. So that was really my pivotal moment to kind of say, how can I do the same work that I love to do, but do it in a way that's so high impact that I feel like it's more purpose driven, right? And not just about a revenue dollar. So that's what really prompted my pivot into government. Government is the largest service delivery in the country, and I'll say almost the world here in the United States, right, for what we do and how we do it. So when you talk about an operator and a technology person like me whose job, and this is what I went to college for, to deliver services, what better way to do that than with our government? So I started working with Tech to Gov on thinking through what that would look like and where was that need. And they just did a phenomenal job helping me kind of match skill and my technology passion and background to a role that can really make a difference. And that's how I've been in this role. When I say I'm newer to the role, is all of 30 days. But already it's been the most high impact 30 days, because now we're already thinking about executive orders that will write and create on our technology and digital services in order to provide better access. JC, I think you said legislation. So to be able to weigh in at that level and then work on a team that brings that forward for, in my case, New Yorkers, but also I'm going to just go ahead and say Americans, because I've been on the call with federal groups and agencies, and it's a partnership in other states talking about how we can scale this work in a big way. I tell you, it's a feeling that you just don't get for me, in my opinion, in your day to day. And like I said, I did a lot of work in private sector. I worked Fortune 30. So I worked at the biggest companies in the world doing very senior level work. And though we had a lot of great wins, like I said, this work that we're doing has the most impact and kind of touches the most people.
Thank you, Tonya. As a New Yorker myself, I'm very excited that you are in this role and you're getting some good work done. So congratulations again on your new role. And Kat, let's hear from you. Please share.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first, JC and Tonya, a lot of those, purpose reasons resonate for me too. And I think, I'd been quite adjacent to this work, right, as a federal contractor. So I had a good idea of what it might be like. And I had some friends who had already made the transition, which was, really helpful for me in thinking it through. But I'd seen the limits of what I could do in my role as a contractor, and I could see how like sometimes we were handed the problem to solve and didn't get to do a lot to shape that problem. So Tonya, like you were saying, right, like getting to influence legislation and executive orders and getting further back in that process, I was really excited about the ways I, might be able to influence and build more of that like product thinking and get more of that ease of use for all of the people who we serve. It starts so far. It starts so far back. It starts in like budgeting and conceptualizing like how we think about building tech at the very early stages. So that was really motivating for me. And I was excited about this role at SBA in particular because I really wanted to be embedded in a program office. There's lots of different ways to enter government. I think you've heard, a few of the different booths here. Like there are more consultancy models, there are shorter term engagements. Like there's lots of ways you can come in. With the familiarity that I already had, I knew I wanted to be surrounded by other career government folks because I wanted to learn from them and I wanted to learn the kind of deep bureaucracy pieces that I didn't have access to as someone who was outside of it. That felt really exciting to me. And then I'll also say, just on a really practical level, like where I was at when I was about to make this transition, it was a couple years into the pandemic. I was super burned out. I had taken a few months off of work and was trying to be like, okay, like what's the thing that I'm going to do next? I was looking for a role where I could still do impactful work that I cared about, and also knew I was transitioning into a different phase of life, right? Where I'm trying to have kids. I'm trying to like have more balance with where my work can end on a day, right? And I would say, not all government jobs are like this, but there is much more of a 9-to-5 culture in the office where I am. And like, that's the thing I was specifically looking for. I was like, how can I make a lot of impact with the, hours I'm able to give at this stage of my career? And, federal and this office felt like the right fit to be able to do it.
That's great. Thank you, Kat. And there are definitely some pros of government work. Generally it's more stable and secure. We've heard a lot about work-life balance. So thanks for bringing that up. All right. So before we jump into, please feel free again to post your questions in the chat for the panelists or about government service in general. Let's hear about one more topic. So any advice you would give to someone considering this transition, or maybe when they get boots on the ground, how to kind of handle their first days, weeks, or months? JC, mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Well, I think first of all, just the fact that all of you are here is already like one of the best pieces of advice I would be able to make. Is coming to these events and talking to all these agencies, connecting with like-minded people. That's super important, right? Like government tech is not just like you do something yourself by yourself and that's it. You got to talk to other people, you have to collaborate with other people. And like when I was in school, I didn't even know that civic tech was a thing. Like I didn't know that public technology was a thing. I don't think any of my classmates really knew. So the fact that you are in in events like these and you are thinking about making a move to public tech, that's, I feel like, is the best first step that I think you can make. um, I will talk specifically because my experience is within the like early career folks, but people who are still in school, I would very, 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 another very, coding it forward if you are interested in getting a taste for what federal and state agencies working with them would look like. I think it's a very great way to kind of get into technology or get into the government technology. Um, it's it's for, I believe, 10 weeks or 12 weeks, and it's like much easier than getting a whole clearance and going through a background check and doing all those kinds of things. um, it's a very good way to kind of like dip your toes into government technology and to see if you like it. For folks that maybe have already graduated, they have like maybe 0 to 2 years of experience, very much would recommend looking into the digital core. That is actually created by someone who founded Coding It Forward, and now they have built a program for early career technologists. It is a really great program. We actually have some digital core members on my team at work, and they're amazing. So I very highly recommend it. Um, my general advice to folks would be to network, to talk to people that are kind of in the area, and see what's available. I believe Chris Kwong has a very good article on like how to get into technology, or like into government tech, and to like what to look into. There's a lot of amazing people on Twitter that you can follow. There's a lot of mailing lists that are always posting job postings and opportunities and things like that. I think those are all great resources, and leverage your resources when you can, because those are the kind of like the ways to kind of get into the space, and get like your experience and doing things in there. I will also link the article, Christine, for sure. But yeah, when you do get into government technology, like let's say you're starting your first day, um, we all have opinions, right? Like everyone, I think, is opinionated because we're in technology, and we all have said like, this would work way better if we did X and Y and Z. And honestly, you're probably right. There is a lot of like low hanging fruit, or there's things that just don't work the way you would think they would work. Um, and I would say when you see like a problem that is like happening, especially like in the government, chances are there is someone in your organization that has already seen that problem and has been like working at it for a while to remedy it, right? um, and I would say, instead of, if your first kind of thought is to be like, okay, I'm gonna like go and fix that problem, and I tell everyone like you're all doing it wrong, and you should be doing it this way. um, I would advise against that. I would say go for the more diplomatic approach, of saying like, hey, I've like noticed this problem. Are there people in this problem space that would like to, or that have been like looking at this? What have we tried? Like, what are we missing? Do we need like buy-in, or other things? Like, do we need just like expertise to create this? What do we need to kind of do? um, Creating a more collaborative like environment will most likely make sure that your I guess not crusade, but like your way of trying to fix things will go by much more smoothly. So I'd say, yeah, there's a lot of great people in government. Learn about them, talk to them, figure out what you can do, but work with other people, and kind of you know do what you can there.
Excellent advice that I hear a lot is, coming in with that kind of level of humility, curious observer mindset, because there probably are people who have already noticed this problem and they've run up against different, bureaucratic handrails or challenges. So that's really fantastic advice. Tanya, what is your advice you give to somebody? And I'm sure that you have some fresh examples from the last 30 days.
I do, and JC, I think you hit the nail on the head, and Georgia, you reemphasize that. You really need to, I would say, when you make the transition into government, come in with an open mind, right? Because it's different. But come in with an open mind and then apply your skills and talents from there. So like JC said, you're asking questions. It's really more of a different approach than our standard approach in private sector, because he's right. A lot of people have been working on these things, but there is a strong desire for change. There is a strong desire for technology modernization. There's a strong desire for experience and user experience. It's just coming in and applying your skills in a different way. So I would say have an open mind. The things that I've done in the past to say, okay, I have a playbook for this. This is how this goes. I've seen it a million times. My playbook is different here, right? Because I just had to have an open mind to kind of hear it all and then creatively transition my skill set into solutions that actually help the state and inform legislation. It's just a different way to think about things. So I would say that. And then I think the other piece is, I'll just be candid. Pack your patience. You need it. You'll need some patience for this as well, because there's a lot of legacy systems, a lot of legacy processes, a lot of legacy things in many areas. But this is part of this whole why we need you, right? To kind of think through a lot of this. So I would say also just be patient. In some ways, you've heard this earlier in the conversation, there is a method to the madness, right? There might be laws or reasons why things are the way they are, but our jobs when we go in is to bring that different level of thought and drive change that way. So I would just say, just kind of be open to that, having an open mind, knowing you maybe have to approach things a little bit differently, and then pack your patience, because you still have to drive the same level of change. So that's the advice that I would offer as you all are out talking to different agencies and thinking about your next step.
Thanks, Tonya. I think I need a baseball cap that says "Pack your patience" on it. That's a great catchphrase. And last but not least, Kat, let's hear your advice, and then we'll tackle some of these audience questions.
Yes. Well, I think JC and Tonya, excellent advice, and I'll echo some of it. I'm also going to steal some good advice I heard from the Federal Chief Information Officer of the U.S. government recently, which is, if you want to make an impact, go where you're rare. You don't have to be the very first. Like, there are plenty of places in government where you can join other teams of really excellent technologists. But it is true that we're in a movement of bringing more folks with these skills into government, and it's a place where you can really magnify your impact by bringing those skills that we haven't had the opportunity to have a lot of them in a lot of these offices before. And then I'll also say, once you're there or on your way there, build your network. I think, JC, like you said, it is just so helpful to have other folks to talk to. For me, that's looked like having friends in other agencies or other branches of government, but it's also looked like investing in building relationships with people in my office, because like Tonya said, it really is a whole different sector that you're transitioning into. And I'm learning so much about navigating bureaucracy and what to expect and when to push back, and when something is like a checkbox exercise versus something you really have to pay attention to, right? And those people who have the experience and have been there and have seen it, those are folks you can really lean on to kind of learn how to navigate in those early days.
Thanks, Kat. So let's talk about USA jobs. Kat and JC, maybe you both can speak to this a little bit. So we see a lot on USA Jobs, which is the federal government hiring website. If you haven't checked it out yet, you should definitely go in and poke around, set up maybe some email alerts for titles or agencies you're interested in. I always recommend that to folks. I get a few myself because I'm curious about where the moving and shaking is happening. So we often see IT program management or IT specialist titles across many agencies, many general service GS levels. What does that mean? Why are there so many of them? How did you maybe personally navigate sifting through and finding what you were really qualified for and what really interested in you when there were so many similar titles, if you can speak to that? It's a tricky one, I know.
Sure. I can take a first stab at this. Yeah, so difficult, or it's not, super fun. I'm sure a lot of people have experiences with USA Jobs, and it's not the easiest. And I wish I had some really good uh, advice to share about navigating USA Jobs and making sure that you're always at the top of the resume pile. But I don't really. There is like a handbook to creating a federal resume and navigating USA Jobs. I believe it was the General Services Administration that posted that. I can find the link in a bit. But with my path, I actually, again, I did it through initially. being an intern, having the people on my team like know me, and then when I was ready to come back, they actually reached out to me and hired me like directly through there without having to necessarily fill out a USA Jobs. It was more of like sending in my resume and having them kind of like take advantage of the process. Um, I would definitely say like, yeah, again, like having people that can be like, hey, you would be great for this role. It goes a long way. And for the people who maybe already are in the government, and they're thinking about ways they can support the folks here looking for jobs, um, be that person that cuts through the red tape. It is really really helpful. I mean, it can take a while, right? Like government hiring can take months. It can even take up to a year. And the longer it takes, the more these people that have such amazing experience and talent uh, go to other places because they can't wait 8 months for a security background check, or for someone to just get back to them and tell them like, hey, yeah, okay, we can interview. How's like 3 months sound? Um, and for the people who are applying, again, I would say, connect with the folks here, go to their booths, talk to them, and make sure that they kind of know you, because that I feel like is the best way of um, getting like a callback, or being able to kind of like talk to someone, and not just going to like the endless void that is USA Jobs, where maybe sometimes you'll hear from them, maybe not, but it's kind of like it's not very easy. So yeah, again, talk to other people.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. The other thing I'll add is following folks who post about these jobs or getting on newsletters. There are people doing like really excellent curation work of some of the jobs that come through USA Jobs. I recently got on US Digital Responses list. I bet they have a booth here today. But they do a great roundup of jobs at various government levels. So I'd recommend finding sources like that too.
Thanks, Kat. There are definitely tons of resources online, and there's also a federal hiring playbook, which if you Google that, it should come up. It's on the Tech Talent Project website. And I also just want to give you all props because, in terms of building a network and asking questions and meeting folks in this area, you're already doing it by being here. So, props to you for taking this first step. And let's see, we have another question from the chat. Maybe we can have, whoever would like to speak to this kind of generally. How do you navigate working in government on that kind of career civil servant side when maybe some policies or politics are happening in the forefront that you might not agree with? How do you kind of, approach that in your daily work or just in your approach to work? Anyone have anything to share about that?
I can jump in and share. I think that's a fantastic question, and it is something that you think about when you transition into government. Right, there's a lot going on, but what I've found for myself, and in talking to other people who I've known have made this move, you focus on the work, which is what I've always done in the past, and for me, the work is, are we advancing, accessing services and benefits? As Americans, we're taxpayers. We're paying for certain services that need to be delivered. That's nonpartisan. And when I'm working with the teams and we're thinking about that, I'm thinking it kind of shuts off some of that other noise, all the other noise that's happening, and gets us back to really focusing on what we're here to do and what we're here to deliver. And I kind of leave all of that to them. So that's kind of my compartmentalizing, my personal views or things like that, and thinking about the impact that I'm here to make for being the voice of New Yorkers and helping to really help share these best practices across the United States. So those would be my thoughts.
Yeah, I want to agree with that. Yeah, what Tanya said is 100% correct. Um, yeah, I think the federal government is huge, right? There's also state governments and local city governments. And there's a lot of things kind of going on, right? And again, if you're in civic technology, or if you're in kind of like this area, chances are you have opinions, right? Chances are you also have political views. There's no getting around that, and that's great, I think. And I would say just because, or there's like two ways of thinking about, like, you have standpoint, like you're creating technology to advance this policy that either the president or Congress has decided to enact. Um, but then there's also building out the actual technology that these agencies need to function in the first place. Like before 2018, a lot of refugee and asylum practices was done almost completely in paper, um, and a lot of it still continues to be paper, right? Um, and so a lot of the work that we've been kind of doing is digitizing a lot of those processes, and making it easier, one, to keep track of like applications and folks and documents, um, and by building that, we also increase the capacity of the agency to be able to do the policies that you may want, right? Which is like being able to have people go through the process faster, more efficiently, and flag folks that you may not necessarily want to immigrate through. um, but yeah, I mean, like, there's like the policy standpoint, but then there's also like the capacity standpoint, and creating that those kinds of projects, that code and that like those applications, to make it so that the people that are working in the agencies can do the work that they need to. That's how I kind of see certain things of, like, okay, yeah, we're building this so that we can be better, essentially. And I will say, of course, also very candidly, of course, with each administration, if there are like certain policies that get too egregious, or you cannot reconcile with your moral code, I think it's also very like fine to be like, I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'll like look for something else. And of course, that goes with everyone, or like that goes per person. But that also is a how do you say? That is something you can do, essentially.
Thanks, JC. Kat, in our last few moments here, do you have anything else to add?
I think they covered it really well, but I will just add that I've been kind of surprised in getting to work with folks who've been in these government roles for so long and who've seen a lot of administrations change. That there are priorities that shift, but there really is a lot of work that day to day stays the same and really relies actually on the people who do not change to carry that work forward across administrations. So I'm really eager. I hope that I'm in a government position the next time things change over, because I kind of want to see this in action. But to JC's point about all of the capacity building work that continues on, that's kind of how I think about where I put my energy on a day to day.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, we are at time, so I will encourage everyone to come on back at 3:45 p.m. Eastern for closing remarks. And thank you again to our fabulous panelists. It was great to hear from you today, and thank you for sharing your stories and your tips and tricks about navigating entering government service and public service. And everybody have a great day. Again, give yourself some props. You're on the exact right track, exactly where you need to be. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for having us. Have a good one, y'all.